Welcome back now for the news in detail beginning. Leaders of the world's top 20 economies are meeting in Japan for the first day of the G20 summit. The Osaka meeting takes place against a background of trade tensions between the United States and China and the US and Iran in the Gulf. United States President Donald Trump says trade is his top priority at this year's summit. China's President Xi Jinping has warned against rising protectionism, while India, Japan and Russia have defended multilateral trade rules. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe expressed concerns over the changing global trade environment. He urged major economies to deliver a strong message supporting free, fair and indiscriminate trade. UN Chief Antonio Guterres is pushing the G20 gathering to discuss non-proliferation and China-US trade issues. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and US President Donald Trump have met on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Osaka. The two leaders discussed bilateral and global issues, including defense, trade and 5G communications. Discussing in Iran, both sides agreed to keep in touch to promote stability in the region. During the meeting, Trump said the countries can work to resolve their trade differences. Earlier, the United States President told India its tariffs on Washington's products were unacceptable and must be withdrawn. India imposed duties on 28 US imports after Washington withdrew a preferential trade status for India. Now, for more on this, we are joined by our New Delhi correspondent Neha Punia. Neha, thank you for joining us. So, based on what has come out of the Trump-Modi meeting, other than the delegation-level talks, which were already on the table, Neha, it appears there has not been any breakthrough regarding recent trade tensions. So, what have you learned?
That's right. We've just heard from the Indian Foreign Ministry. There was a formal debrief after President Trump met Prime Minister Modi in Osaka. And the biggest takeaway seems to be what you just highlighted, that the two leaders have said that this was an opportunity to clear the air about a lot of issues that there were misunderstandings over. The topmost priority for Donald Trump being trade, something he tweeted about as well a day before he reached Japan. And both the leaders have decided that there will be bilateral engagements between the commerce ministers of India and the United States, and this is going to happen very soon. The indication is perhaps in the days ahead there might be a meeting scheduled between the two ministers of the two countries, and that this will be resolved with topmost priority. The White House interestingly said that India offered solutions to reduce the massive trade deficit it has with the United States, something Mr. Trump has repeatedly used to target Prime Minister Modi personally since 2017. We don't know what those details are. This is not something that the Foreign Ministry in India referred to when they gave out that debrief a short while back. But important to see this meeting in the context of which it took place. You had that visit by Mike Pompeo on Wednesday. On Thursday, you had Donald Trump tweeting saying that he's going to ask India to do something about the tariffs. It was an acrimonious tweet almost. And then when you had this meeting with Prime Minister Modi, he only had positive words for the Indian Prime Minister, saying that Indo-US ties have never been better, that he didn't want to get drawn into the specifics of the trade problem, but there would be some sort of fix to this. He also interestingly said before the meeting started that there's going to be a very big deal announced that wasn't announced. So this is pretty much a zero-sum game. We're back where we started, where the US is trying to downplay the trade issue. Donald Trump saying, yes, it's important to me, but we will fix this in the days ahead. We don't know whether there's been any give or take from either side, but there's definitely been a de-escalation based on the warmth between the two leaders.
Right, Neha. So Prime Minister Modi has joined the growing chorus of criticism against economic unilateralism. So Neha, how do you think that will fare with Trump, who is not known to take criticism well, and how will it affect India's future relations with the United States?
That's not a new position that Prime Minister Modi has taken. Earlier this month, at the sidelines of the SCO summit, when he met President Xi, there was a joint comment from both leaders pretty much saying the same thing. At every fora that Prime Minister Modi has spoken on in the last 1 year, he's repeatedly said this, that there should be a rules-based trading order as far as the world is concerned, that there should not be a lot of priority given to rising protectionism and unilateralism. And that's a comment that he has echoed once.
We lost connection with our correspondent from New Delhi. I think she's back. Neha, can you hear me? Neha. Are you there, Neha?
Yes, I can. I was
please
saying
continue,
that
please, Neha, continue.
This is a position that Prime Minister Modi has Right, I was saying this is a position that Prime Minister Modi has taken repeatedly in the past as well. Just last month at the SCO summit, earlier this month at the SCO summit, beg your pardon, he said the same thing. What's more interesting, I believe, is that what this rising protectionism has meant for India's ties with other countries, for example, China, as a result of the kind of inward-looking stance that Donald Trump has taken. India has increased its trade partnership with Beijing, something that the US is certainly very uncomfortable about. India, on the other hand, claiming that there needs to be a robust global trading system, even if that means it has a trading partnership with a country like China, with which it has a very complicated relationship on other platforms and on other reasons. So I don't think this is going to immediately impact the relationship. There are already a lot of issues to wade through. So I think India's position on multilateralism is certainly the least of President Trump's priorities, given the current context of the trade standoff.
Right, Neha. Also, Prime Minister Modi's proposal of the WTO reform did not fare well with Russia, as President Putin warned against any such agreement. With tariff tensions with the United States unresolved, is it a wise move by Prime Minister Modi to create a trade policy differences with India's long-term ally?
This has also been a position that India has taken for a very, very long time. Last year as well, when Donald Trump first spoke out against the WTO, completely dismissing that format, India was one of the leading voices saying that you need an organization like the World Trading Organization to help mediate a lot of the trade standoffs that emerge as a result of countries looking increasingly inward. This is a policy that India has found a lot of support on from various countries in the European Union as well as in Asia as well. So I don't think that's a position that India has taken with respect to a particular nation. It is something that it believes is essential to ensure that robust trading practices can continue as they have been. It's also important to remember that India has also been at the receiving end of a lot of alleged violations of the WTO. Many countries have filed reports against India for the kind of subsidies it gives to its farmers, etc. One of those countries being the United States. So India's position stems not from the kind of issues it internally faces in the WTO, but the importance of a platform like this, which can help resolve trading issues which are then separate from bilateral issues. So like I said, there's a lot happening already on the Indo-US trading front. The WTO, India firmly believes, is a good platform to resolve that, not bilaterally but multilaterally. So I think it's going to stick to that position and deal with Donald Trump.
Thank you, Neha. Thank you, Neha, for your updates. That was our New Delhi correspondent, Neha Punia. Thank you very much, Neha, for your updates. Now, moving on with the news, Russia says the BRICS countries should play a more active role in solving the crisis in Syria. Speaking at a group meeting in Japan, Russia's President Vladimir Putin said stability in Syria is crucial to regional and global peace. Putin says the BRICS should also work to reduce volatility on global energy markets. The United States Special Envoy to Iran has said that Washington's policy of maximum economic pressure on Tehran is working. Brian Hook warned that there will be consequences if Iran breaches nuclear restrictions. He said United States sanctions do not give Iran the right to breach its nuclear commitments. Meanwhile, Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif said that sanctions are equivalent to war. Zarif said a short war with Iran is an illusion. He said negotiations and threats cannot go together. Acting U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper has appealed to NATO defense ministers to help safeguard strategic waterways near Iran. He said the United States does not seek armed conflict with Iran, but is ready to defend its forces and interests in the region. Meanwhile, China is calling for calm and restraint in the Gulf, saying all differences should be resolved through talks. President Xi Jinping says the region faces a sensitive situation and is standing at a crossroads of war and peace. In a meeting with UN Chief Antonio Guterres at the G20 summit, Xi said China always stands on the side of peace. Beijing has denounced U.S. pressure on Iran, calling on Tehran not to withdraw from the 2015 nuclear deal. Meanwhile, Beijing has asked the United States should immediately remove sanctions on Chinese companies, including tech giant Huawei. Commerce Ministry spokesman Gao Feng said that withdrawal of sanctions is necessary for stability in Sino-US ties. Meanwhile, Huawei has denied a media report accusing it of conducting research for Chinese military. A Bloomberg report alleges Huawei employees worked with the Chinese army on a number of research projects. Huawei's legal affairs chief Zhong Liuping said the organization does not customize products or conduct research for the military. Afghanistan President Ashraf Ghani has now arrived in Lahore on the second and last day of his official visit to Pakistan. Ghani met and held talks with Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan. Pakistan and Afghanistan have agreed to remove obstacles to trade and travel between the countries. Prime Minister Imran Khan says Pakistan is committed to greatly improving ties with Afghanistan. Both leaders agreed enduring peace in Afghanistan will bring economic opportunities. Khan says an Afghan-led, Afghan-owned peace process is essential to end the conflict. U.S. President Donald Trump says he is exploring a delay in the 2020 census. The statement comes after the Supreme Court barred Trump administration from adding a citizenship question to the census form. In a 5-4 verdict, the Apex Court ruled that administration did not give an adequate explanation for including the contentious question. Opponents of the question called it a Republican ploy to scare immigrants into not taking part in the population count. The White House argued the question would help protect minority voters. Since 1950, citizenship question has not been a part of the census. The official population count is used to allocate seats in the U.S. House of Representatives and distribute federal funds. More news coming up after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Moving on with the news. Chilean President Sebastián Piñera says his country recognizes the right of Palestinians to have a sovereign state. Piñera is on a visit to Israel and the West Bank. More details in this report.
Chile's President Sebastián Piñera is visiting Israel and the West Bank. He's met Palestine's President Mahmoud Abbas. Piñera is backing Palestine's candidacy for observer membership of the United Nations.
I told him that Chile recognized the right of the Palestinian people to have their own free, sovereign, independent state. Chile also recognized that right and that it would support the candidacy of Palestine to be an observer member of the United Nations and also of other United Nations organizations such as UNESCO and the World Trade Organization.
President Abbas says a political solution guaranteeing freedom to Palestinians is necessary for regional stability.
A political solution that guarantees freedom, dignity, independence, and justice for our people must precede any economic programs or projects because this will create security and stability for all.
Israel has lodged a protest with Chile after Piñera visited a holy site in Jerusalem with a Palestinian minister.
Moving on, Bahrain has recalled its ambassador to Iraq for consultations after demonstrators attacked its embassy in Baghdad. A crowd stormed the Bahrain embassy, objecting to the US-led Israel-Palestine peace conference being held in Manama. Protesters waved Palestinian and Iraqi flags. Bahrain, the UAE and Iraq have condemned the attack. Palestine has repeated its rejection of Washington's proposal to invest $50 billion as part of its so-called deal of the century. Meanwhile, Sudan's protest leaders claim they received a new transition blueprint drafted by Ethiopia and the African Union. The plan proposes a 15-member civilian majority governing body for a 3-year period. The plan makes no mention of the composition of a legislative body. Sudan's military asked mediators from the African Union and Ethiopia to come up with a joint transition proposal last week. In Sudan, students have held a rally against the ruling military council near the presidential palace in Khartoum. Security forces fired tear gas to disperse the demonstrators. The Protesting Alliance for Freedom and Change has called for mass rallies in Khartoum and other cities on June 30th against the ruling generals. It's the first nationwide call since a crackdown on a protest camp on June 3rd left dozens killed and hundreds wounded. Talks between the military council and the opposition collapsed after the military action. A political crisis has gripped Sudan since former President Omar al-Bashir was overthrown on April 11th. Nigerian people displaced by violence have protested against the food shortage in the city of Maiduguri. The protesters displaced by Boko Haram violence took to the streets and also complained of medicine shortage in their camps. More in this report.
About 4,000 men, women and children from the Gubio camp for internally displaced persons block a busy highway in Maiduguri and disrupt traffic. Dozens of armed soldiers, policemen and paramilitary personnel tried in vain to convince the protesters to leave the highway. The protesters say they have been suffering for the past 6 months and the authorities are not helping them.
We are tired of living in these conditions of hunger and starvation, and we have no money to feed ourselves. It has been almost 6 months now. Even if some get food, others do not get enough. We are appealing to the Office of the Secretary to please take us back to our community.
According to a displaced person, at least 6 people died in the camp within a week due to lack of drugs. The protesters accused camp officials of diverting aid supplies meant for the 33,000 IDPs from 8 districts in Borno State.
We are suffering in terms of hunger and starvation as well as poor hygiene in this place. It's been 6 months now that food and money meant for us has been brought and has not been diverted elsewhere. It would be better for us to go back to where we were before, to have peace of mind and live better.
The violence has displaced thousands of people from farming, herding and fishing communities, destroying the livelihoods of over 2 million people.
German Chancellor Angela Merkel has been seen trembling for the second time in a month. The incident happened while she was attending an event with Germany's president. Merkel is headed to Japan for this weekend's G20 summit as planned, and her spokesperson insists she is well. After the G20 meeting, she will go to Brussels for an EU summit. A similar incident occurred on June 18th while the Chancellor was visiting Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Merkel blamed dehydration for it. The Chancellor has no history of serious health issues but is known to have a hectic work routine. A record heat wave has gripped European countries. According to their Met Department, Germany, Poland and the Czech Republic have recorded their highest ever temperatures for June. The temperature is likely to go up further in many countries in coming days. Extreme temperatures may grip 33 of the 50 Spanish provinces on Friday. The stifling heat has also sparked wildfires. The European Union has called on Italy to resolve the issue of rescue ship carrying 42 migrants after it was stopped by the Coast Guard. The EU says it is monitoring the situation. Owned by charity group Sea-Watch, the boat remained in international waters since June 12th. It has entered the Italian waters despite a ban. Far-right Interior Minister Matteo Salvini has closed Italy's ports to migrants after accusing charity rescuers of being complicit with traffickers. 11 migrants have already been taken off the ship by the Italian Coast Guard for health reasons. Now, Indonesia's Constitutional Court upholds President Joko Widodo's victory in April elections. The country's top court has rejected a challenge to election results that alleged massive and systematic fraud by President Widodo. Widodo's victory was challenged by the losing candidate Prabowo Subianto. Former General Subianto has accepted the court's decision. The court said the legal team of the losing candidate failed to prove the allegations. The election results showed Widodo had won the lead, the world's third largest democracy, with 55.5 votes. A wildfire has been raging in the northern Spanish region of Catalonia, spreading across 16,000 acres. The blaze is being called the worst region has seen in 20 years. Authorities in Catalonia have been struggling to bring a wildfire under control since Wednesday. Despite deploying 260 firefighters, 60 vehicles and 15 aircrafts, the inferno could not be extinguished. The blaze currently covers 16,000 acres and could eventually increase five-folds. Weather conditions in Spain are making the firefighters' job more difficult. The temperature is expected to soar to over 43 degrees Celsius. 45 people have been evacuated from the farmhouses in the area. Now, stocks slid as China and the US stuck to their tough stance on trade ahead of the highly anticipated meeting between the countries' leaders in Japan. Asian markets have retreated as investors keep a nervous watch on the developments in the G20 summit. Japan's Nikkei 225 declined 0.35% in afternoon trade. Mainland Chinese stocks also slipped by the afternoon. In Hong Kong, the Hang Seng indexes are trading lower. Stocks in the South Korea and Australia also declined. Wimbledon champion Angelika Kerber is through to the semi-finals of the Eastbourne after beating Romania's Simona Halep. Kerber took 1 hour and 13 minutes to beat Halep 6-4, 6-3. She converted 5 of her 7 break points against Halep. The 3-time Grand Slam champion will next face unseeded Tunisian Ons Jabeur, who defeated Britain's Johanna Konta. And now let's have a look at the weather around the globe. Well, that's all for now. For more news and updates, keep watching Indus News.